The Discovery Ethan had been traveling through the galaxy for weeks, assigned to a mission that seemed simple enough on paper. But as his shuttle descended toward the lush green planet below, he couldn't shake the feeling that this mission would be different. He was a human, one of the few from Earth to explore the far reaches of the galaxy, but this time he wasn't alone. Beside him stood Lyra, an alien girl from the planet they were about to explore. She was tall and had soft blue skin that glowed faintly in the dim light of the shuttle. Her eyes were wide with excitement and fear, and her excitement was contagious. The planet they had landed on was called Risa. It was known for its ancient ruins and untold mysteries. For centuries, her people had told stories about the old pyramid hidden deep in the jungles of Risa. No one had been able to find it, or at least no one had come back to tell the story. The pyramid was said to hold knowledge, a power that could change the fate of the galaxy. Lyra's people, however, had always stayed away from it, believing it to be cursed. As Ethan stepped out of the shuttle and onto the soil of Risa, he couldn't help but notice how dense the jungle was. The trees were towering, their thick leaves creating a canopy that blocked out most of the sunlight. The air was heavy with the smell of earth and moisture. It was unlike any place he had been before. He felt a thrill run through him, knowing that they were about to uncover something that had been lost for centuries. Lyra led the way, her steps quick and sure as she moved through the dense undergrowth. Ethan followed close behind, his boots crunching softly on the forest floor. He wasn't sure what to expect from this planet, but Lyra seemed at ease, as if she had been here 1,000 times before. She didn't speak much as they walked, but her quiet determination told him she knew exactly where they were headed. Hours passed as they made their way deeper into the jungle. Ethan was starting to feel the weight of the mission. They hadn't encountered any threats yet, but the jungle seemed alive, almost watching them. The trees stretched high into the sky, their twisted branches creating shadows that played tricks on his mind. Despite the beauty of the place, there was a sense of danger lurking in the air. Finally, they came to a clearing. In the center, half buried beneath vines and thick foliage, stood the pyramid. It was massive, its ancient stone walls covered with symbols and carvings that Ethan couldn't understand. The pyramid towered above them, its top lost in the clouds. It looked as if it had been there for millennia, untouched by time, yet it still had a strange, powerful presence about it. There was something about it that made Ethan's skin prickle. "This is it," Lyra said softly, almost reverently. Ethan stepped closer, his eyes scanning the pyramid's surface. The stone was weathered, but the markings on it were still sharp and clear. They glowed faintly under the light, as if they held secrets just waiting to be unlocked. Ethan ran his fingers along one of the symbols. The texture was rough, ancient, but it hummed under his touch, a strange energy pulsing from the stone. He felt it in his chest like a heartbeat, deep and resonating. Lyra looked at him, her expression serious. "My people have legends about this place," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They say it holds a power beyond anything we've ever known. But it's dangerous. The last time someone tried to enter, they never returned." Ethan didn't answer immediately. Instead, he took a deep breath and turned to Lyra. "You're not worried?" Lyra's eyes flickered with uncertainty. "Of course I am. But we have to know what's inside. It could change everything." Ethan nodded, his heart racing. He had always been curious, always sought the unknown. That's why he was here. He wasn't about to let fear stop him from uncovering what was hidden inside this ancient structure. He took a step toward the entrance, his hand reaching for the stone door that stood slightly ajar. It was a small opening, just big enough for someone to slip through, but there was no way of knowing what lay beyond. He glanced at Lyra. "Are you ready?" Lyra hesitated, then nodded. "Let's go." They approached the entrance, and as they did, the air grew cooler, almost unnervingly so. The jungle outside felt distant now, as if they had crossed into another world altogether. Ethan reached for the door, and to his surprise, it gave way with only the slightest touch. It swung open slowly, revealing a dark passage inside the pyramid. Ethan could feel the weight of the moment. They were about to step into the unknown, into a place that no one had entered for centuries. He felt a strange mix of fear and excitement. Fear because he didn't know what dangers awaited them, but excitement because this was exactly what he had trained for. The thrill of discovery. The rush of finding something that had been lost. To time, Lyra stepped forward first, her eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. She moved with confidence, her every step a testament to her knowledge of this ancient place. Ethan followed her closely, his senses alert. The passage was narrow and dimly lit, but as they walked, the temperature began to drop even further. It felt as if the pyramid was alive, breathing with them as they ventured deeper into its heart. Minutes stretched into hours, as they made their way through the winding corridors. The further they went, the more they realized that this place wasn't just a pyramid. It was a maze, a labyrinth of ancient tunnels and rooms that seemed to stretch on forever. The walls were lined with more symbols, more carvings that Ethan couldn't decipher, but they seemed to tell a story. A story of an ancient civilization that had built this pyramid to protect something precious. Something powerful. They reached a large chamber at the center of the pyramid. In the center stood a massive stone pedestal, atop which rested a glowing orb. It pulsed with a strange energy, and Ethan felt a pull, an urge to touch it. But before he could move, Lyra's voice stopped him. "No," she said firmly, her voice filled with warning. "This is where my people's legends end. This is the heart of the pyramid, the source of its power. We can't just touch it." Ethan felt the weight of her words, but his curiosity was overwhelming. He took a step closer to the pedestal, his hand reaching out to touch the orb. As his fingers brushed against it, the pyramid seemed to shake. The walls rumbled, and a low hum filled the air. Ethan's heart raced as the ground beneath them trembled. He pulled his hand back, but it was too late. The orb had reacted to his touch, and now, something was awakening deep within the pyramid. The first touch, the moment Ethan's fingers made contact with the orb, the entire pyramid seemed to come alive. The ground beneath their feet trembled, sending a shiver through his body. Lyra's face went pale as she stepped back, her eyes wide with fear. She grabbed his arm, pulling him away from the pedestal, but it was too late. The hum in the air grew louder, and a bright light surrounded the orb, casting strange shadows across the chamber. Ethan could feel the energy surging, almost as if the pyramid was breathing. "What did you do?" Lyra gasped, her voice shaking with panic. Ethan opened his mouth to respond, but before he could speak, the walls of the pyramid began to shift. The stone panels that lined the passageways groaned and moved, and the floor below their feet began to rise. The entire pyramid seemed to be adjusting to the touch of the orb, as if it were some kind of lock being turned. "I didn't mean to," Ethan muttered, his heart racing. I thought it was." But Lyra wasn't listening. She was staring at the orb, which now pulsed with an eerie glow. "This is wrong. You've triggered something. We need to leave now." Ethan glanced around the chamber, trying to understand what was happening. The once still walls now seemed to be alive, shifting and changing, revealing hidden doorways and passages that had been concealed for centuries. He could see strange symbols glowing faintly along the walls, the same symbols they had seen earlier, outside the pyramid. But now they seemed to be moving, rearranging themselves in an unearthly dance. "What is this?" Ethan whispered, his voice filled with awe and dread. "I told you this place was cursed," Lyra said, her voice low and fearful. "But you didn't listen. My people have stayed away from it for a reason." Ethan's mind raced, but before he could respond, the pyramid shook once more, and a loud, mechanical click echoed through the chamber. The ceiling above them began to open, revealing a hidden passage that led even deeper into the pyramid. The light from the orb shone brighter now, casting long, stretching shadows across the walls. Lyra's grip tightened on his arm. "We need to go. We can't stay here." But Ethan was rooted to the spot, his eyes locked on the orb. There was something about it, something powerful and ancient, that called to him. It was as if the pyramid itself had chosen him, and he couldn't shake the feeling that he had to understand what it was, what it meant. "I can't leave," he said, his voice steady despite the rising panic in Lyra's eyes. "Not without. Knowing what this is, we've come this far. We have to see it through." Lyra opened her mouth to protest but stopped. She looked around the chamber, her expression torn. Ethan could see the fear in her eyes, but there was something else too, a deep curiosity that mirrored his own. After a long pause, she let out a sigh. "Fine," she said quietly. "But we do this together. No more touching things without knowing what they do." Ethan nodded, but his eyes never left the orb. It seemed to be calling to him, pulling him closer. His instincts screamed at him to stay away, but his curiosity overpowered his fear. He knew that whatever lay ahead, it was something that could change everything. Without another word, he began to move toward the glowing pedestal again. This time, Lyra stayed close, her footsteps soft but steady behind him. As they reached the pedestal, the orb pulsed again, sending a wave of energy through the room. Ethan's fingers hovered just above it, the air thick with tension. He could feel the power radiating from it, almost like it was alive. "Don't do it," Lyra whispered, her voice barely audible. But Ethan couldn't stop. He reached out and placed his hand on the orb once more. This time, the reaction was different. The light from the orb flared so bright that Ethan had to shield his eyes. The hum in the air grew louder, almost deafening. The ground shook beneath their feet, and Ethan stumbled, feeling the weight of the pyramid's power pressing down on him. The light from the orb filled the chamber, and then, suddenly, everything went silent. The rumbling stopped. The humming faded away. Ethan opened his eyes, blinking in the sudden quiet. "What happened?" he whispered. Lyra was staring at him, her face pale. I don't know. I've never seen anything like this." The orb was no longer glowing, but its surface shimmered faintly, as if it were waiting for something. Ethan took a step back, his hand still outstretched as if it had been drawn to the orb's energy. He looked around the chamber, but nothing seemed to have changed, at least nothing visible. But Ethan had a feeling that something had shifted, something that couldn't be seen yet. Lyra's voice broke through his thoughts. "The pyramid is responding to you. Whatever you've done, it's like it's been unlocked. But why you? Why now?" Ethan shook his head, trying to make sense of it all. "I don't know. But I think this was meant to happen. The pyramid, it was waiting for someone who could understand it." Lyra stared at him, uncertainty in her eyes. "But we don't understand it. No one does. My people, we were warned not to touch it, not to disturb it. Now you've opened it, and we don't know what's going to happen next." Ethan turned away from the pedestal, his mind racing. They had triggered something ancient, something powerful. And now they were trapped inside. The pyramid had been waiting for them. But why? What was hidden here that they were meant to find? As the walls of the pyramid shifted once more, revealing new passageways, Ethan felt a strange sense of destiny. Whatever came next, whatever secrets the pyramid held, he knew he had to see it through. This was just the beginning, and he couldn't turn back now. Lyra, still on edge, took a deep breath. "We need to move forward. The pyramid's opening its secrets. We need to be ready." Ethan nodded. "Let's go." The passage ahead was dark, but the faint glow of the orb lit their way. As they moved deeper into the pyramid, the air grew colder and the silence was heavy. Ethan could feel his heart beating faster with each step. Something was waiting for them ahead, something that could change everything. but the only way to find out was to keep going. The ancient warning the passage that opened above them seemed endless. The soft glow from the orb illuminated the dark, narrow tunnel that stretched deep into the heart of the pyramid. Ethan could feel the weight of the air around him, heavy and thick, as if the very atmosphere inside the pyramid was trying to warn them. He glanced at Lyra, who was staring at the passage with a look of pure dread on her face. "What's down there?" Ethan asked, his voice barely a whisper. His curiosity was building, but so was a sense of unease he couldn't shake. Lyra shook her head slowly, her eyes never leaving the passage. "It's ancient. The stories say it's a place that no one should enter. My people, our ancestors built this to protect something powerful. But they never spoke of it clearly, only in whispers." Ethan couldn't understand why she seemed so afraid. He had seen ancient ruins before, but this was different. The pulse of energy from the orb still hummed through his veins, and he felt an undeniable pull toward the passage ahead. Despite Lyra's warnings, he took a step forward, then another, moving toward the unknown. "We can't turn back now," he said softly, though a small part of him wished he could. Lyra didn't say anything. She merely followed him, her steps hesitant and slow. They descended further into the pyramid, the air growing colder with every step they took. The walls around them were smooth and dark, covered in layers of dust that hadn't been disturbed in ages. But the strange symbols from earlier were still there, glowing faintly in the dim light. As they walked deeper, the symbols began to change. Some shifted, others faded, but a few stayed the same, flickering in and out of focus. It was as if the pyramid was alive, responding to their presence. Ethan reached out and brushed his fingers against one of the glowing symbols. Instantly, the stone beneath his hand warmed, and the symbol blinked as if it were alive. He jerked his hand away in surprise, his pulse quickening. It wasn't just ancient. It was almost sentient. "You shouldn't touch them," Lyra said quietly, her voice full of worry. "They are meant to test those who enter. Only those who are chosen can pass through unharmed." Ethan stopped, looking at her. "Chosen? What do you mean?" Lyra hesitated. "There's a reason no one from my people has entered this place for generations. The pyramid was built as a tested trial. It's not just a structure. It's a guardian of sorts, meant to protect something powerful. Only those worthy are allowed to uncover its secrets." A cold shiver ran down Ethan's spine. He didn't feel worthy, but he didn't feel like he had a choice either. The pyramid had already chosen him by reacting to his touch. He wasn't sure what was happening, but he couldn't turn back now. Suddenly, the passage ahead narrowed and they were forced to walk single file. The walls closed in on them, and the light from the orb flickered, casting eerie shadows on the stone around them. The deeper they went, the more suffocating the silence became. It was as if the pyramid was waiting, watching, and judging. Finally, they reached a large chamber at the end of the narrow passage. The room was vast, its ceiling so high that it was swallowed by darkness. In the center of the room stood a massive stone altar, and around it, the walls were lined with more of the strange symbols. But these symbols were different. They were not glowing like the ones before. Instead, they were carved deeply into the stone, ancient and weathered. Ethan stepped forward, drawn by an unseen force. As he approached the altar, a low humming sound filled the room, the same hum he had heard earlier when he touched the orb. The humming seemed to vibrate through his chest, as if the pyramid itself was alive, reacting to his presence. Lyra grabbed his arm, pulling him back. "No," she whispered urgently. "We need to leave. This is where the trials begin. No one has ever made it past this point." But Ethan couldn't move. His eyes were fixed on the altar. There was something about it, something that called to him in a way he couldn't explain. His hand moved toward it, almost of its own accord. Lyra tried to stop him, but it was too late. As soon as his fingers brushed the surface of the altar, The entire room seemed to shake. The symbols on the walls began to glow, and a deep, rumbling voice echoed through the chamber. Ethan felt a chill run down his spine as the voice spoke in a language he didn't understand. But somehow, he felt as if he could hear the meaning of the words, even if he couldn't understand them fully. "You have entered the sacred place of the ancients," the voice boomed. "You are not alone. You are being tested. Will you prove worthy?" Ethan's heart raced. He had no idea what was happening or what the pyramid wanted from him. All he knew was that it wasn't over. The real trial had just begun. Lyra, looking terrified, stepped back. "I told you," she whispered. "This is the part where people disappear. We can't stay. We need to go before it's too late." But Ethan couldn't bring himself to leave. The trial was something that had to be faced. He had come too far to back down now. As the humming grew louder and the shadows in the room seemed to move, Ethan knew that there was no turning back. The pyramid had chosen him, and now he had to face whatever it was guarding. The glowing symbols around the chamber began to spin slowly. The light pulsed in a rhythm, like a beating heart, and the air inside the chamber grew colder with every passing second. Ethan stood still, staring at the altar where his hand had just touched. A deep feeling of being watched settled over him, and he could feel his chest tighten with fear. Lyra stepped backward, her eyes wide with panic. She looked around the room, scanning the walls and the ceiling for any way out, but there was nothing. The doorway they had come through was no longer there. It had sealed shut without a sound, trapping them inside. Ethan turned to Lyra, his voice low. "What is this place?" he asked. "Why would they build something like this?" Lyra kept her eyes on the glowing symbols. "This is the trial I warned you about. This chamber tests the hearts of those who enter. Only the brave and pure can pass. But the pyramid does not make it easy. Many before us have failed." Suddenly, the altar in the center of the room began to sink slowly into the ground. As it disappeared, a wide circular pit opened in its place. From that pit, a soft blue mist rose and began to spread across the floor. The temperature dropped, and a strange low sound like whispering filled the air. Ethan took a step back, covering his mouth with his sleeve. The mist had a sharp chemical smell, and it stung his nose. Whatever was in that pit, it was not meant for comfort. "Look," Lyra pointed toward the walls. Small openings had appeared in the stone, and from those openings strange flying machines began to float into the room. They were small, silver, and had glowing eyes. They moved without wings or sound, but their presence made Ethan's skin crawl. "Are those drones?" he asked. "No," Lyra whispered, "more like watchers. They are part of the trial. They scan your mind, your fears, your purpose. If you lie or hide your thoughts, they react." As the watchers floated closer, Ethan could feel their focus on him. It was like having a spotlight shining directly into his soul. He tried to keep his thoughts clear, but flashes of fear, guilt, and doubt moved through his mind. One of the watchers hovered inches from his face. A small red light blinked on its side, and a beam of light passed over Ethan's eyes. He closed them tightly, but the scan continued. After a few seconds, the watcher moved away, slowly joining the others. Ethan turned to Lyra. "Did it do the same to you?" She nodded and looked down. "I do not think it liked what it saw before." Ethan could respond. The symbols on the floor started to glow, forming a large circle around the pit. A new sound filled the chamber, a deep grinding of stone, as the floor beneath them began to shift. "Move!" Ethan shouted, pulling Lyra away from the edge. Stone panels rose from the floor, creating a twisting path over the pit. The path was narrow and uneven, with glowing edges that looked unstable. One wrong step and they would fall into the mist. "Below we have to cross," Lyra said quickly. "The watchers will not leave until we finish the trial. We have to make it to the other side." Ethan looked at the path, then back at the floating watchers. They were still circling above, silent and still watching. Waiting, he took a deep breath and stepped onto the first stone. The panel wobbled under his weight, but it held. He moved carefully, one step at a time, with Lyra close behind. Each stone they stepped on lit up, while the ones behind them slowly faded. Into darkness they could not go back now, only forward. Halfway across the path, a loud crack echoed through the chamber. A stone panel behind them broke off and fell into the mist below. Ethan froze, gripping Lyra's hand tighter. "We need to hurry," he said as they moved faster. Another challenge appeared, long metallic arms extended from the walls. Each arm held a glowing blade, spinning slowly at first, then faster as they got closer. The arms swung across the path in random patterns, making every step a gamble. Lyra gasped as one of the blades swung just inches from her shoulder. She ducked quickly and rolled across the next panel, breathing hard. "That was close," she said. "I do not think they are meant to stop us. I think they are meant to scare us. Well, it's working," Ethan muttered as he ducked under a spinning blade. Two of them pressed forward, jumping from one panel to the next, dodging the deadly arms and trying not to look down. The mist below them swirled like a living thing, and the sound of whispers grew louder. Finally, after what felt like hours, they reached the other side. A wide platform opened before them, with a staircase leading upward. Ethan collapsed to his knees, breathing hard. Lyra sat beside him, her face pale but determined. "We made it," she whispered. "I can't believe we made it." Ethan looked back at the path behind them. Most of the panels had fallen, and the watchers were slowly disappearing into the mist. The pyramid had tested them, and somehow they had survived. "You think that was the end?" he asked quietly. Lyra shook her head. "No, the real test is still ahead. The pyramid does not just test strength or courage, it tests the heart, and we still don't know what it's guarding." Ethan stood slowly and helped Lyra to her feet. They climbed the staircase side by side, their bodies sore, but their minds alert. At the top of the stairs, a tall stone door stood waiting. Unlike the others, this door had no carvings, no symbols, only a single handprint glowing in the center. Ethan looked at Lyra, silently asking for permission. She nodded. "It's you. The pyramid responds to you. This has always been your trial." Ethan placed his hand on the glowing print. The door rumbled, then slowly slid open, revealing a final chamber filled with golden light. Whatever was waiting inside would change everything. They both knew it, and they stepped through together. Final revelation. As Ethan and Lyra stepped into the final chamber, a wave of warmth washed over them, the golden light inside was bright but soft, and it seemed to move like sunlight dancing on water. The room was unlike anything they had seen in the pyramid. It was not dark or cold or filled with traps. Instead, it felt peaceful and still, as if time had stopped here. Long ago, the walls of the chamber were covered with shining patterns that shifted slowly like living art. The floor was smooth and clear like polished glass, and in the center stood a tall crystal structure glowing with a soft blue light. It pulsed gently like a heart beating in slow, calm rhythm. Ethan looked around in awe. He felt something deep inside him, something that pulled at his thoughts and feelings. It was not fear or pain. It was something else, something powerful but kind. Lyra stood beside him, her eyes wide with wonder. She took a step forward and whispered, "This is the core of the pyramid. This is where the power lies." They walked slowly toward the crystal structure. It was almost as tall as the chamber itself, and inside it, they could see shapes moving slowly like shadows trapped in light. As they got closer, a voice filled the room, but it did not come from the crystal or from any speaker. It came from everywhere at once, soft and calm and clear. "You have passed the trials," the voice said. "You have shown courage, heart, and unity. You have earned the truth." Ethan looked around, trying to find the source of the voice, but there was nothing there. No machine, no figure, just the voice and the light. Lyra stepped forward and spoke. "Who are you?" The voice answered. "I am what remains of the builders. I am their message, their warning, their hope." Ethan took another step forward. "What is this place? Why did you test us?" "This pyramid is not a tomb. It is not a weapon. It is a lock." The voice said it was built to protect something very old and very powerful. Long ago, the builders discovered a force too strong for any one race to control. They chose to hide it and test any who came close. Only those who showed true balance between strength and wisdom could unlock it. Ethan looked at the crystal, his mind racing. "What kind of force? What does it do?" The voice paused, then answered, It is energy that can shape worlds. It can heal or destroy. It responds to the heart of the one who holds it. That is why it must never fall into the wrong hands. Lyra touched the surface of the crystal. It glowed brighter at her touch. The builders wanted to protect all life, she said. They did not want war or power. They wanted peace. Yes, the voice said, and now the time has come to choose. The energy must not remain hidden forever. It must pass on to those who are ready. The crystal began to change. Its surface shifted, revealing a glowing core inside. A soft wind rose in the chamber, though there was no source for it. The air shimmered with tiny lights, and the ground beneath them began to hum gently. Ethan stepped back, unsure. What happens now, you must decide, the voice said. Take the gift and carry its burden, or walk away and let another find it one. Lyra looked at Ethan. Her eyes were full of emotion, fear, hope, trust. It should be you, she said. The pyramid chose you from the beginning. Ethan felt the weight of the choice pressing down on him. He had not asked for this. He was just an explorer, a curious human looking for answers, and yet here he stood with the fate of something ancient and powerful in his hands. He walked slowly to the crystal and placed his hand on its glowing core. A warm light flowed into him, not painful but deep and strong. It filled his mind with memories, not his own visions of stars and planets, of peace and war, of hope and loss. He saw the builders, long gone now, noble beings who had left behind this final message, this final test. He saw their worlds and their dreams and their warnings. When he pulled his hand away, the crystal dimmed slightly, and the room grew still again. The voice returned, softer now. The gift is yours. Use it wisely and never forget its purpose. The crystal slowly sank into the floor, and the golden light began to fade. The chamber remained silent, as if the pyramid had gone back to sleep. Ethan turned to Lyra, a calm expression on his face. It is not just power, he said. It is a promise. A promise to protect, not to rule. Lyra smiled. I believe you will keep that promise. As they made their way back through the pyramid, the traps and trials no longer threatened them. The watchers were gone, the spinning blades still. The mist had cleared. The doors opened for them silently, as if the pyramid itself was guiding them out. When they finally stepped into the sunlight again, the jungle around the pyramid was quiet. The sky above them was clear and wide, and for the first time, Ethan felt truly awake. He looked back at the ancient structure, its stone surface glowing faintly in the morning light. It no longer looked like a mystery. It looked like a guardian, silent and proud. What now? Lyra asked. We tell the others, Ethan said. We share what we've learned, and we protect what we found. As they walked away from the pyramid, the wind moved gently through the trees, carrying with it a new sense of hope. The journey had changed them both, and though the future was uncertain, one thing was clear. They were not just explorers anymore. They were the keepers of something far greater, and their story had only just begun.